1 week after my 18th birthday, I got what felt like the best gift of my life. My uncle fell and broke his leg. I know, it sounds bad. I'm not glad my uncle got hurt, but I am happy that my parents decided to leave for a week to help him, and I'm really glad they don't trust me to be alone at home yet. They asked Jack if he could come and stay at our house for the week, and he said yes. Jack is my dad's best friend. He practically helped raise me. I have so many memories of Jack from when I was little. He was always there for me, protected me, and helped me with whatever I needed. He was truly the best. But then my feelings started to change. It began a couple of years ago. I started noticing his well-built body, the strong line of his jaw, the cute dimple that appeared in his left cheek whenever he laughed or smiled, and his eyes. His piercing blue eyes looked incredibly good with his black hair. I'd recently noticed a bit of gray starting to show, but I didn't care. I just thought it made him more attractive. I'd been saving myself for Jack, and this week I was finally going to get him to see me as a woman, his woman. I'd been flirting with him quite boldly for a while now, but so far, he'd refused to respond in the way I hoped. But I was 18 now, and he was going to be with me alone for a whole week. I was willing to do whatever it took to win Jack over. The poor guy didn't stand a chance. My parents had already left a few hours ago. When I heard an engine in the driveway, I squealed with happiness and peeked out the window. I watched as Jack got out of his black Jeep. Just the sight of him made my heart flutter, but that wasn't all. Looking at his broad, muscular shoulders and chest, the black t-shirt that showed off his biceps, and the jeans that fit his figure so well, my heart started beating faster. I felt a strange warmth inside me, the same feeling I always got when Jack was around. How could he have such a strong effect on me? I watched him grab a duffel bag from the back of his Jeep, sling it over his broad shoulder, and head for the door. Nervously, I looked down at the revealing outfit I was wearing. I had on my short shorts, a tight t-shirt without a bra, and I'd painted my toes a pretty pink. I'd left my long blonde hair down, because he'd once said he liked the way it curled slightly at the ends. Sure, it was just a passing comment, and it had been a while ago, but it still mattered to me. Damn it. I knew Jack had a key, so I waited at the top of the stairs until I heard the door click shut and the heavy sound of his boots in the entryway. I tossed my hair one more time and ran down the stairs, yelling his name. Jack, I shouted as I rushed down the stairs. His eyes widened when he saw my bare legs and the way I was dressed. I gave him a big smile and jumped into his arms for a hug, wrapping my legs around his waist. I pressed myself against his firm, muscled body and breathed in his familiar scent. He always wore a nice, smelling cologne, but beneath it, it was his unique smell, and I loved it. He laughed, gently set me down, and then pulled me away. I made a sound of protest and pouted. Hey, he said, placing a finger under my chin to tilt my face up to his. You're getting a bit too old to be doing that, aren't you, Simone? Jack, I pouted. Didn't you miss me? He smiled, showing that charming dimple. Of course I missed you, kiddo. He gave my arm a quick squeeze, then picked up his duffel bag and headed to our downstairs spare room. I could barely contain my mischievous grin as I ran to catch up with him. I tugged on his forearm and pulled him back towards the stairs. That's not where you're staying, silly. I'm not? Of course not, I said as if it were obvious. Mom and Dad aren't going to make you sleep on that uncomfortable futon for a week. They told me to tell you to stay in their room. I held onto his arm as we walked up the stairs, leading him to the bedroom right across the hall from mine. Once inside, I threw myself on the bed and ran my hand over the top blanket. See? Much more comfortable. I washed the bedding and got everything ready for you. I could see a look in his eyes as he watched me on the bed, but instead of joining me, he gave his head a sharp shake and quickly looked away. I don't mind staying in the guest room. Maybe it would be better if I were downstairs. No, Jack, this is what they wanted. Besides, I said, rolling onto my stomach and kicking my feet, I'll feel a lot safer knowing you're so close to me. He rubbed a hand over his face and sighed. I gave a happy squeal when he said, okay, I'll stay in here then. Perfect, I said, jumping off the bed. I'll go and start supper. I walked a few steps and stopped. Oh, I forgot to tell you that they're having trouble with the hot water in the master bath, so you'll have to use my shower. I laughed when his blue eyes got even wider. I mean, use my shower. I hope you don't mind. I didn't wait for him to answer. Instead, I gave a little excited jump because I liked the way he looked at me, and then headed downstairs for the next part of my plan. How on earth was I supposed to get through the week with Simone acting like this? When Rob asked me to come and stay at his house for the week to keep an eye on his daughter, I knew it wasn't a good idea. I should have said no, made up some lame excuse, but the temptation to spend so much time alone with Simone was too strong. I'd agreed, and now I was standing in my best friend's bedroom, trying to make the inappropriate thoughts I had about his daughter go away so that I could leave the room and go downstairs. I'd never had any improper thoughts about Simone until recently. Now, my mind was constantly filled with images of being close to her, of her looking at me in a certain way, of us sharing intimate moments. It was driving me crazy. I'd always loved her and been protective of her, but now things were on a whole different level. I felt a possessiveness towards her that shocked me. I knew it could never happen, though. I could never have my best friend's daughter. She was like a forbidden fruit. I'd just have to learn to live without her in that way. I ignored the pain in my chest at the thought, but when I remembered how she looked in that tight white t-shirt and those shorts, I felt a stirring inside me. A cold shower. That's what I needed. I grabbed a change of clothes from my duffel and was about to use the master bath, but as much as I needed to cool down, the idea of standing under ice, cold water didn't appeal to me. Instead, I went into the hall bathroom. I groaned when I saw all of Simone's things on the counter. The whole bathroom smelled of her sweet floral scent, and I felt a strange sensation at the smell of her. I tried my best to ignore everything, but when I saw her lacy undergarments hanging to dry, I almost lost my composure. I ran my hand over the the fabric, and I knew I was in for a difficult week. The next 7 days were going to be a constant battle to keep my thoughts in check. I quickly undressed and stepped under the hot water. Forget a cold shower. I wanted and needed some warmth. Immediately, my mind started to wander. I imagined Simone in the shower with me, the two of us sharing a moment, her looking at me with a certain expression in her eyes. My heart raced at the thoughts, and just as I was getting carried away, an image of Simone with a gentle glow about her, as if she were in a different kind of moment, flashed through my head. It made me pause and wonder what was going on with me. Simone in a different light? Where did that thought come from? I couldn't deny that the thought of being close to her in a more meaningful way excited me, but it was also crazy. She was so young, and, most importantly, I reminded myself, she was off limits. I forced those thoughts from my mind and stepped out of the shower. I tried to ignore the lacy lingerie and the lingering scent of her perfume, even though she wasn't there. I dressed and hurried downstairs. When I walked into the kitchen, I was greeted by the smell of something burning, and Simone bent over the oven. Her short shorts were riding up, and I could see more of her than I should have. I felt a sudden rush, and my earlier resolve seemed to fade. So much for my attempts to stay in control. When she stood and turned to me, I noticed that she'd been crying. Her bottom lip quivered, and 2 trails of tears slid down her sweet face. She stood there, twisting the potholder in her hand, her face flushed with embarrassment. "Hey, what's the matter?" I asked, reaching out to her. She immediately ran into my arms. Her small body shook against mine as I rubbed circles on her back. I felt a reaction in myself at the feel of her in my arms, but I hoped she wouldn't notice. "What's wrong?" I asked again, reaching down to tilt her face up to mine. Her large chocolate brown eyes were still full of tears, but at least they seemed to have stopped for now. She gave a small sniffle and said, "I burnt our supper." The words came out as a whimper, and when a new stream of tears started, I gently wiped them away with my thumb. "That's okay," I said, trying to reassure her. "I can just order us a pizza or something." Her small body still trembled slightly against mine. I could feel her closeness, and it was both comforting and a bit too much. She bit her bottom lip, and I felt a strange tension. "I just wanted to show you that I could cook a meal for you," she finally admitted in a whisper. "Is that what this is about?" I smiled down at her, touched that she'd tried so hard for me. She was trying to cook me a nice meal, and here I was, struggling with my own inappropriate thoughts. I felt ashamed. "Simone," I said, tucking a strand of her long hair behind her ear, "I don't care that you burnt one meal. I'm just touched that you tried it all. Maybe we can cook a meal together tomorrow night. Would you like that?" She smiled one of her beautiful smiles, the kind that always made my heart soften, and nodded her head. "Great," I said, giving her a smile in return. "I'll order a pizza for tonight, though. I don't think whatever was in the oven can be saved." I gave her a wink and was rewarded with a small laugh. She stepped back, and I had to resist the urge to sigh at the loss of her closeness. The tears were gone now, but I could still see signs of her crying. Her cheeks were still a bit red, and her eyes still had a glistening look. Why did that make me feel a certain way? I pushed those thoughts aside. She gave another one of those girlish jumps that made her seem so full of life, and said, "Great. I'll go find us a movie to watch," and ran from the room.